Welcome. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I'm Councilmember Weezar. We've been joined by Councilmember Marquise Harris-Dawson and Councilmember Felipe Fuentes. And if we could go to item number 4 at this time, please.
Item 4 is the Director of Planning's report.
Director of Planning is not here, so we will note and file that item. Do we have any cards? We do have cards on item, no, we don't on 4, huh? No, we don't. Okay, so we'll note and file that item. Item number 1.
Item 1, Councilman, is a draft ordinance being transmitted by the Planning Commission to create a new enabling zone in the city, the live-work zone.
Welcome, and we could ask staff here to give a brief overview of this item, please. You should come up here to the table, yeah.
Good afternoon, council members. Brian Eck with the Department of City Planning. So before you today is proposed ordinance to establish an important new zoning tool for the city of Los Angeles, the hybrid industrial live-work zone. The first of its kind, the proposed zone would allow industrial mixed-use areas to evolve without fundamentally changing their function as productive, tax-generating, job-focused areas, and at the same time meeting many of the city's policy objectives. The HI zone comes in response to identified needs of the city and to larger emerging trends in several ways. First, it recognizes the nature of the workplace is changing and that many people are wanting and choosing to live and work in the same space. Second, the city's 2008 industrial land use policy study recognized special needs for hybrid industrial areas and made specific recommendations that new zoning tools should be developed which would allow living and working to peacefully coexist under the right circumstances. Finally, recent updates to the building code, specifically to section 419, will allow true live-work units, which are entirely distinct from traditional apartment uses, to be developed in new construction for the first time. The proposed zone aligns these trends, these new regulations, and policy objectives of the city. The Planning Commission approved the item as recommended by staff on August 13th. Since that time, there have been few technical refinements made to the ordinance consistent with the intent of the Planning Commission. Specifically, changes have been made and found in section C.2 to align state law and city code with the density bonus provisions done in consultation with our city attorney, and to C.5 to allow implementation of the provisions related to live-work units. And that's been done through the guidance, with the guidance of building and safety. And we continue to work on the technical refinements of the ordinance with the appropriate departments. So there's a lot of nuance here to the zone, and it's been thoughtfully crafted to balance many different forces. So without getting to all the details, I just want to share some of the essential elements that sets us apart. First, the ordinance formalizes live-work as a new use within our city's zoning code and creates standards for live-work units that will allow each and every one to serve as a functional workplace with outside employees. Also included are requirements that buildings constructed under this zone reserve space for meaning productive uses beyond just the live work. This will create dynamic mixed-use buildings and allow industrial mixed-use areas to evolve without compromising their emphasis on employment and ensure that these areas do not become traditional residential and retail areas, which might be more suited for other areas of the city. Next, the zone includes building form provisions such as taller ceilings, open floor plans, incentives for adaptive reuse, and incentives for type 1 and type 2 constructions. These regulations will create supportive environments for the mix of uses that we envision as part of the zone, including live work, hotel, light industrial, and creative office, and ensure that there are appropriate incentives in place for the preservation of interesting building stock that give these areas their unique character. So taken together, these provisions strike a balance between many of the forces and have been thoughtfully crafted so that the city can responsibly use this tool in the very specialized context of hybrid industrial areas, and without compromising those elements that make those places special and add a lot of value to our city. So thank you, and we're available for questions.
Thank you. What we will do with the concurrence of my colleagues is first go to public comment. and then we'll come back for a discussion, if that's okay with you, and if you could also come back to the table here. Thank you. So we will hear public testimony at this time, and I'll be calling 3 people at a time to make it more efficient as we hear from people. The first 3 are Dana Sales, Elizabeth Peterson, and John Given.
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Sales with 360 4309 Overland Avenue in Culver City. 360 represents several property owners in the greater downtown area. We're very supportive of this ordinance to help address the jobs, housing, and balance in the city with no vehicle and industrial zones to produce new construction and live-work housing opportunities. However, we do request some modifications to ensure meaningful implementation of this ordinance. We urge you to remove the 110-foot height limit or at least increase it beyond 150 feet to promote type 1 construction and allow for more flexible building forms. The current regulations are too restrictive at 110 feet and make heavier construction typologies financially viable. We also would like to see the 100-room hotel limit on guest rooms permitted in over 100 rooms in this area. While we understand the intent of the ordinance is to promote boutique hotels, it is design, amenities, operations, and branding that create boutique environments. The city should not dictate the size of any business operation, and such limitation will deprive the city of vital visitor serving and sales tax revenues. Thank you for your consideration. We urge your support of this ordinance.
Thank you. Elizabeth Peterson.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Peterson, 400 South Main Street, Unit 808, Los Angeles, California. I wanted to let you know that I'm highly in support of this. I too feel that the height restriction is much too low. We work with a lot of boutique hotels, and about 150 rooms seems to be that point that actually financially pencils out. I'm an avid proponent of artists and residents live work and a combination of working in manufacturing, as I spent many years as a resident of the biscuit and toy factory, and I had 3 businesses there while residing there. So I think that we've really identified this, and I think that it's wonderful that they're taking this throughout the city and not just in the Arts District, because I think it's very thoughtful and very appropriate for all of the hybrid industrial. Thank you.
Thank you. John Given.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weezer and committee members. John Given on behalf of the LA River and Business Association, the Arts District, Community Council, and several individual stakeholders. I submitted a letter earlier to the record regarding CEQA and several other issues. The community members will be speaking on the policy issues and the specifics regarding the ordinance. I'm just going to make a few comments on the environmental review here. So planning is relying on the so-called common sense exemption here. I don't believe that it applies, but even if it did apply, the city has the burden of providing support for the exemption in the form of substantial evidence and not simply relying on a thought experiment that is very conclusory in nature. Even in the several plastic bag cases that were litigated about this particular issue, and there seemed really an obviousness that replacing single-use paper bags would not be as good as using reusable bags or paper. The exemption in those cases was all required to be supported by substantial evidence. That doesn't exist here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Michael DeVires, Wayne, and Alex Anamos. Welcome.
Thank you. Michael DeVilliers, TCA Architects, 801 South Grand Avenue, Los Angeles. I'm here as representing my firm. We're working on several projects in the Arts District and beyond, mixed use, live work, etc. And we're here to show our support for the ordinance. We wrote to planning and you a while ago with particular points of adjustment that we were proposing. I won't go over all of them here, but just wanted to emphasize one of them that we feel is a bit onerous, and that is the 200 square foot requirement for the arts and productive uses, and we're asked for your consideration of reducing that perhaps to 100 square feet. Also, just that in your consideration of the final version of the ordinance, that you provide for flexibility to designers and developers in coming up with specific projects, and that staff has the tools to consider project specifics. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Wayne here? Wayne is not here. Alex?
Hi, my name is Alex Anamos. I'm an architect with Lorcan O'Hurley Architects here in LA, but I'm also the American Institute of Los Angeles 2015 chair of the Urban Design Committee. And I'd like to say that we in the Urban Design Committee, a community of professionals who would love to see the enhancement of Los Angeles as an increasingly vibrant city with great streets, people streets, and interesting diverse neighborhoods, are in support of the hybrid industrial live-work ordinance. We recently met with the city planning to help give input to their transit neighborhood plans that they're unrolling for different parts of the metro. And those guidelines, when they were released, the design guidelines for the new TNP, clearly borrow a lot from the hybrid industrial live-work ordinance. We think because, you know, a lot of those parameters are very strong. I think that if a lot of the city were subjected to these design guidelines, we'd have a pretty amazing place.
Thank you. John Walsh, Chris Martin, Dr. Josh Albrechtsen.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, or J. Walsh Confidential, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. As to item number 1, we are in full agreement.
Chris Martin.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Chris Martin, son of Jesse Martin, owner of Value Produce in the Arts District, and I too support the ordinance. Since I was a child, I have seen my father work day and night just to provide for our family. I have seen his business prosper, and today our family owns Value Produce, one of the largest produce distributors in Los Angeles. I am very proud of what my father has accomplished, and I find it disturbing that newcomers to the Arts District only look at their own interests and taking into consideration their interest of the properties and that have not been there as many years as our family has. I also find it disturbing that a vocal minority feel entitled that the Arts District should be hindered with this. We would like to be in support of the ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Josh Albrechtsen.
Hi, my name's Dr. Josh Albrechtsen. I'm representing myself, downtown resident. I think this is probably going to pass you guys, and I'm actually here to talk about something more than that. I know this isn't supposed to be about housing, but this really is. As you know, we are in a housing shortage here in Los Angeles. No one could afford to live here anymore because the rent keeps going up and up, mostly because we lack supply. This is one of the best ways that you guys could actually increase supply in Los Angeles. And I really hope that you guys actually loosen some of the restrictions today rather than waiting a while. We were in a recession before and we ended up with a lot of entitled parking lots. And I hope that you guys actually make it easier for people to build housing that people could actually use today, so that instead of ending up with entitled warehouses, we'll have actual housing that people can use. And if we do end up in a recession, hopefully they lost their money. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Hall, Lorraine Orlig, Edward Flores.
Good afternoon, City Council members. My name is Larry Hall with Camden. I'll be reading a letter from Chinatown Business Improvement District, written by Mr. George Yu, the Executive Director. Dear Council members, I'm writing to express our support for the creation of a new hybrid industrial live-work zone. I believe that the new zoning tool, which is a revised version of the former Arts District live-work ordinance, will help foster compatible development and add housing in the Arts District and other industrial zone areas. I endorse the fact that the ordinance, which will be eventually applicable citywide, maintains the necessary standards to guide design and community integration of live-work units and productive spaces in hybrid industrial areas. The new zone creates new housing, preserves the industrial and artistic character of various neighborhoods included in this ordinance, encourages street-level activity, and protects industrial areas from incompatible development. I commend the effort of the Los Angeles City Planning Department has made to reach the community through the series of community meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I believe
can't
you're trying to
pronounce
say Lorcan O'Hurley,
Yes,
is that correct?
Yeah,
Hi,
that's
okay.
a C, not an I. Okay, thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, council members. My name is Lorcan O'Hurley, founding principal Lorcan Early Architects, and I support the ordinance. Since 1990, my firm has built over 75 projects across 3 continents. Our diverse work ranges from large mixed-use developments and university complexes to art galleries and bus shelters. Our work has been fortunate enough to be published in over 20 countries and recognized over 100 awards. I support the ordinance because it creates a roadmap to the future. The Arts District and other industrial areas in the city can see a radical transformation, allowing creativity with a unique style of new development that maintains the integrity of the area. That's very important. I'm very tied into SCI-Arc. I've taught there for many years. I really understand this area and really excited about the prospect in the future. This ordinance will allow designers to shape an exciting and bold new city that makes possible a better standard of living for all. I believe this ordinance will accomplish all this. I support the ordinance and urge you to also approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward Flores?
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Edward Flores. My family address is E20 Olvera Street. My family has been merchants on Olvera Street since the 1930s. My fellow merchants here recognize that this ordinance has the possibility to revitalize not only downtown area, but outlying areas as well. This ordinance favors common people, and it'll bring affordable housing to this area, some commerce, jobs, and some diversity. It has the potential to reduce congestion because people will be living where they actually work. We're in favor of this ordinance. Some of my fellow merchants are here as well, and we favor this as well, and we urge that you pass this. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie Vong, Patty Berman, Baldomero Capiz.
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Vong, Executive Director for the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. I'm also here on behalf of Mr. George Yu from the Chinatown Business Improvement District. We are here to support the hybrid industrial ordinance. We have great interest in the changes that are taking place in our community, and we support taking steps to ensure the continued growth and prosperity of Los Angeles. Our property owners and stakeholders believe that this new zoning tool will uphold and promote the unique aspects of Los Angeles to be a sustainable opportunity for new development to take place. The mayor has called for creation of 100,000 housing units to meet an existing shortfall. These underutilized industrial property present excellent opportunities to create new housing without displacing existing residents. Thank you.
Patty Berman?
Hello. My name is Patty Berman, and I know most of you know that I am the president of the Downtown Los Angeles Neighborhood Council. Unfortunately, the council has not had a chance to validate the letters coming out of committee yet, so I'm going to speak for myself at this time. I can say, though, that myself and all the other people who've been meeting on this, we are very much in favor of having this hybrid ordinance. It is good for the city because it allows us different ways of having housing that we desperately need. However, we do feel that it has been rather taken over by a vocal minority. We would like to see things that are less specific and prescriptive, and we would like to see more flexibility. For instance, the number of hotel rooms, height limits, the allowance of type A, clubs, lounges, standalone parking garages that are at least lined with retail, and many of the other things that are just, we find, a little too restrictive here. Please put this kind of motion into practice, but let's not be so restrictive. Thank you.
Thank you. Baldomero Capiz?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Spanish, okay?
Está bien, sí. Is there an interpreter here?
Okay, interpreter.
No, I'll interpret as best as I can. Can you? Okay, we have an interpreter right there.
Okay. Buenos días, señores concejales.
Two minutes, please. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you start the time and provide 2 minutes, please? Well, actually, 1 minute, and then we'll interpret it afterwards. So let them speak for 1 minute. Tiene un minuto.
Okay.
Un minuto.
Buenos días, señores concejales. Mi nombre es Baldomero Capiz, de la organización Braceros, y nosotros apoyamos la ordenanza. Nosotros somos un grupo que defiende el derecho de las personas a vivienda accesible a bajo costo. Es muy caro para pagar una renta en la ciudad de Los Ángeles. Es especialmente demasiado caro vivir en el centro a menos que sea en Skid Row. Ya lo dijo el alcalde, necesitamos más de 100,000 viviendas para gente de bajos recursos. Apoyamos la ordenanza porque tiene un componente que incluye un porcentaje de viviendas accesibles a bajo costo y moderado. No queremos que un grupo exclusivo decida qué tipo de gente puede vivir en su área. Los Ángeles es para todos, no solo para un grupo exclusivo. Por eso les pido que aprueben la ordenanza. Thank you.
Gracias.
So the gentleman says, good afternoon, council members. He's in support of the draft ordinance. He says that he supports it because it will provide accessible low-income housing in the city, mentions that rent in the city is very high, especially in downtown, except for the Skid Row area. And then, again, he emphasizes the fact that low-income housing will be provided and that the city belongs to everyone, not just one group, and he represents an organization known as Braceros.
Thank you. Mario Marufo, Mark Belor, and Fred Afari.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mario Marufo. I'm the Vice President of the Lincoln Heights Chamber of Commerce. I am a business representative, and I sit on the Planning and Land Use Committee for the Lincoln Heights Neighborhood Council. But more importantly, I'm a long-time resident, and I own property which would be directly impacted by this ordinance. As a longtime resident of the property owner, I too support the ordinance for the additional housing it will provide our residents. We at the Chamber represent the interests of business owners, but we also support the sustainable development that supports better housing, creates jobs, and stimulates economic growth. We cannot and will not allow dissenting voices to derail the progress just because they feel what is right for them is right for all of us. Lincoln Heights also has artists, and I'm sure new development will attract new artists to Lincoln Heights as more housing with better prices are built. We represent other businesses and property owners who support the ordinance and who share our belief that responsible development benefits us all. In addition, I'd like to also congratulate the City Planning for expanding the ordinance to the Northeast Community Plan and urge the members of this commission to move forward with your support as well. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Mark Belor.
Members of City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Mark Belor. I'm the principal and owner of Belor Associates, an active developer in the Arts District. There are two fundamental problems with the hybrid industrial ordinance that must be changed to encourage sustainable long-term development within the Arts District and the proposed zone. First and foremost, we believe that the 110-foot height limit requirement for this zone is arbitrary and will ultimately discourage the development of type 1 and equal structures. Currently, there is no height limit in the existing CM zone. Why are we establishing a zoning requirement that now limits height in this part of the city? It is my understanding and belief that both developers and the community wish to have future development within this district to be of contrasting nature versus the type 3 and modified type 3 structures that are currently being developed throughout downtown. Therefore, we need to incentivize the development community to build type 1 or equal projects within this district and not penalize them by forcing proposed developments to integrate a higher percentage of affordability to gain access to greater height limits.
Great. Thank you.
Was that my...
Yes, that was your time, and you had 2 points, right? You said one and quickly.
We could reduce the from the 200 square feet to 100 on the productive uses, Floria on arts and productive uses.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fred Afari?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Fred Afari from Elm Tree Investments, 1800 East 7th Street. We're in support of the ordinance also, and the two modifications we're requesting is number one, to have the flexibility for the height on the first floor, which is being established under the draft ordinance to be 16 feet, to be modified to allow flexibility of a lower floor heights in the areas that are not used for retail, and if they're used for driveways and mechanical areas and ramps. And the second item is with regard to reducing the requirement for arts and productive uses from 200 feet back to 100 square feet in order to be able to allow more affordable units to be built, because we feel that the 200 square feet is going to be kind of excessive, and it's not going to be cost effective as far as developing the live work units that are in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Goldsmith, Hamid Bedad, Jody Picinino.
Good afternoon, honorable committee members. My name is Dale Goldsmith. I'm a partner with the law firm of Armbruster, Goldsmith, and Delvac. We support the ordinance, a very innovative ordinance, because it will provide housing, especially needed affordable housing, while maintaining the industrial and jobs focus of industrial areas. As set forth in our September 4th letter, however, we would like to make request three refinements to the ordinance. First, replacing the 200 square foot requirement for arts and productive uses with a sliding scale where the requirement goes down as the number of units go up. We believe that that's important because the current 200 square foot requirement more than doubles the original requirement from the original ordinance. It's not needed since every live work unit must have 5 employees. It's an effort to dictate to the market how projects should be developed, and also it decreases the amount of housing, especially affordable housing. My second point is to amend the administrative adjustment procedures to make it consistent with LAMC 1228. As currently written, it's too narrow and will tie the hands of future city council members unnecessarily on future projects. Lastly, to increase the number of hotel rooms from 100 units to 149 units. Thank you.
Thank you. Hamid Bedad.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable committee members. My name is Hamid Bedad, Central State Development Group, 601 South Figueroa, Suite 2601, LA 90017. We are the consultant for 1700 East 7th Street project. We're generally speaking in support of the project, and I've been working with the planning team making certain comments. We have 2 technical requests which was previously agreed upon by the staff to be implemented. One is the clear ceiling height on the ground floor should be applicable only to the retail as the ordinance has intended. Second one is the 200 square feet production space should be reduced to the original number, which was about 100 square feet per unit, as the 200 is excessive and not cost efficient. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jody?
I'm Jody Piccinino with Camden Development, and I am reading a letter on behalf of Timothy Keating, president of La Dad Space. Dear council members, I am writing to express my support for the creation of a new hybrid industrial live-work zone. I believe that the new zoning tool, which is a revised version of the former Arts District live-work ordinance, will help foster compatible development and add housing in the Arts District and other industrial zoned areas. I endorse the fact that the ordinance, which will be eventually applicable citywide, maintains the necessary standards to guide design and community integration of new live-work units and productive space in hybrid industrial areas. The new zone creates new housing, preserves the industrial and artistic character of various neighborhoods included in this ordinance, encourages street-level activity, and protects industrial areas from incompatible development. I hereby offer my strong support and urge that you move forward with your support and approval of the hybrid industrial live-work ordinance.
Thank you. Gabi Mihova, Blair Betson, Carol Schatz.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Gabi Mihova with Camden Development. I'm reading this letter on behalf of John Menchaca, president of Lincoln Heights Chamber of Commerce. Dear council members, on behalf of the Lincoln Heights Chamber of Commerce, as of today, we are writing in support for the new creation of a new hybrid industrial live-work zone. We believe that the zoning tool will foster compatible development and add housing in the Arts District and other industrially zoned area. We, as chamber members, have a great interest in the changes that have and will continue to take place in our community. Today, we support taking the necessary steps to ensure the thoughtful and continued growth and prosperity of the Los Angeles Arts District. As of today, we endorse the fact that the ordinance, which will be eventually applicable citywide, maintains the necessary standards to guide. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair Betson.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Blair Beston. I'm the Executive Director of the Historic Core Business Improvement District, but I'm also a resident. I'm speaking to you as a resident today. My residence abuts Skid Row and Fashion District. I'm also a stakeholder and someone who's formerly in construction and development. I support this ordinance. We, as the gentleman said, we have a housing deficiency in the city of Los Angeles from market rate to low income, and we need to be finding ways to increase density and make it easier to build for the sake of affordability, walkability, livability, and self-contained communities. We also desperately need hotel units. If we want to support worldwide events and hopefully a new and competitive convention center, we must make this process easier, not harder, and most importantly, in our city center. More specifically, I'd like to recommend if guidelines are going to be maintained for artists and residents, that rather than a floor ratio, we look at possibly an incentive program on a number of dedicated units, or perhaps the affordability will maintain the artists, musicians, and culture that we so desperately wish to preserve, not only in this neighborhood, but throughout our great city. I'd like to extend this thought process to go beyond just the Arts District, look at all of our neighborhoods in downtown, all industrial areas, repurpose them to meet the demand. It's time LA starts building up. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Schatz. Perfect timing.
Hi, everyone. Carol Schatz, President and CEO of the Central City Association. As the architects of the downtown renaissance and advocate for keeping the momentum going, which is feeding the whole city, we would like to ask for your support of the hybrid industrial ordinance. It is good for downtown, it's good for the Arts District, and it's good for the city. We have 3 specific amendments that we would strongly urge you to adopt. First, the requirement to provide 200 square feet of common arts and productive space per live-work unit is too large of a burden on the developers. It's very costly and should be reduced. This requirement will overburden these large projects, take up lots of buildable area that should be used for the housing itself. A tiered system would alleviate this, and this is what we've recommended.
And what are the other 2?
The other 2, we do not agree with limiting hotels to 100 keys, especially in light of the fact that you are all very supportive of more hotels in the downtown area to feed the convention center. And we think that's very important. And allowing the zone administrator to grant adjustments of less than 20% from the requirements contained in the ordinance pertaining to ground floor height. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim Rees, George Rollins, Yuval Bar-Zemmer.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jim Rees. I'm with the land use consulting firm of Craig Lawson and Company. We are here in support of the ordinance, but want to highlight a couple of areas where we would like to see some changes. The 100-room limit on hotels seems to be not justified by the market, and we'd ask for an increase in that. The 200 square feet per unit is excessive, especially when you consider that the units are being designed to operate as work units where there's a certain occupancy required and employment created out of those jobs, or out of that area. The 110-foot height limit is too limiting for a type 1 construction. You're just not going to get that type of a project with that height limit. Those are my comments for you right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. George Rollins.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is George Rollins, 800 Traction Avenue, LA 90013. I've been in the Art District before it was the Arts District, and for 40 years we've created something down there that I think is pretty special, and it's attracting a lot of interest today. And I think the one thing that needs to be done is to find a way to keep the proliferation of the 5/2 construction type down there. It's beginning to fill up the area. They're creating tiny little apartments. Anybody who thinks these apartments are affordable should go down and ask about it, because they are not. And it's destroying the whole fabric of the Arts District, and it's destroyed the whole fabric of lots of areas of the city. I mean, this really got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Yuval Bar-Zemer.
Good afternoon, Chairman Huizar. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Yuval Bar-Zemer. I live in the Arts District. I'm a real estate developer. I'm a board member of the Neighborhood Council. I'm a board member of La Raba. I'm a board member on Arts District Community Council. And I'm a board member on the local bid. It seems like everybody has here a good consensus. We all want more housing. We want quality projects. We want more jobs, more opportunities. So why is there maybe a controversy about how it's getting about? Land use policy is a tricky business. Everybody can describe a policy and think it's going to serve his purposes. And you just heard from a march of developers and paid consultants why 200 is bad and 100 square foot is good and 100 feet height limitation is bad and 150 is better. And we all have an opinion. And for the city to take this act of creating a law, this is not an ordinance, this is a new zone that will impact the future of many parts of the city, without a single study or a review, I think is not responsible. Thank you.
Gina Rodriguez, Danielle Rosenfeld, Jeff Jackson, or Jet Jackson.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Gina Rodriguez, an Olvera Street merchant, and I support the ordinance. Council members, my family has been at Olvera Street or on Olvera Street for over 75 years. We support this ordinance because it will provide additional housing and will also allow people to live in areas where today it's expensive to live. People want to live close to places where they work without having to travel many miles away, especially since some of our employees ride their bikes every day to work because they can't afford to put gas in their cars. The ordinance will also provide substantial community benefits, but most importantly, it will provide jobs. All the new units in this ordinance will be live-work units, not apartments. And I believe this ordinance will increase diversity in areas such as the Arts District. Council members, I urge you to approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Rosenfeld.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Rosenfeld. I've worked in downtown Los Angeles for 36 years on economic development and social development, both as a private business person and as a public servant. And I'm currently working with SunCal on one of the largest parcels in the Arts District. And although that parcel will be outside the scope of this ordinance and require a specific plan, we did want to appear today in support of the ordinance and its goals of preserving and improving the character and quality of the Arts District. At the same time, we would like to speak up in favor of some flexibility on building height on a case-by-case basis, particularly around the edges of the Arts District, and on the limitation on hotel rooms, depending on the market. But overall, this is a very important, long-awaited, and good thing for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Jet Jackson.
Hi, I'm Jet Jackson. I'm a full-time artist. I've been living in downtown LA, the Arts District, for over 30 years. I'm currently in a very small 275 square foot space at Archer at 4th and Hewitt. It's one of the only truly low-income live-work spaces left in all of downtown LA. I've heard some say in opposition to the ordinance that artists won't want to live in 750 square foot spaces. That's not particularly true. I'd be thrilled to have even 500 square feet where I'm at now, but it has to be at a reasonable rate. Traditionally, we artists love huge industrial spaces for cheap when we take over neighborhoods where no one else wants to live. And we all brag about the square footage and when we have it, but it's not necessary. As an artist, we don't need huge spaces. We can live and work making art in smaller circumstances. In my current studio, I've done several 10-foot pieces. Storage and hanging space are what takes a bit more managing. We artists are creative, that's our thing. The most important aspect is that our spaces need to be very affordable. That was always the factor we cared about and what we came down here for. One last little thing on a second issue, if it's That's all right. On the 200 square foot common footage thing that a lot of the developers, I believe that would be a hardship on them. And as an artist, we have a common area room where I live. And it's not that big, but it helps. It doesn't need to be huge. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Wayne, I see you standing there. We called you already. We're going to call on all the other speakers, and then at the end, we're going to put your card at the end of the speakers list. Thank you. Sylvia Tidwell, Eddie Lundeen, John Horvat. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Tidwell, and I'm the head of the Tenants Association at the Santa Fe Art Colony. And we are a community of about 80 artists in a rent-controlled live-work complex established by the CRA. And we're here to support the ordinance. We have seen the destruction of the Arts District as a living district for fine artists. Artists created the district, yet now it is practically devoid of fine artists. It is an artist's ghost town, and artists are now saying, last artist out, turn out the lights. History has shown us that fine artists are the primary incubators for the other arts. The recent Otis report on the creative economy in California tells us that almost 750,000 jobs in Los Angeles are in the arts, either directly or indirectly. And the arts represent over 10% of LA's total economic output. Therefore, our ideas feed and support a huge economic engine. The city loses its artists at its peril. And where artists go, gentrification, prosperity, and creativity follow. We are the goose that lays the golden egg. So please support your artists, keep them here, protect the goose that lays the golden egg. Thank you.
Thank you. Eddie Lundeen.
It's actually Edie. That's okay, it happens all the time. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Edie Lundeen. I am the vice president of the Los Angeles Derby Dolls, and I'm also a member of the East Los Business Foundation, and we too are in full support of this ordinance. Our communities are geographically diverse, and we welcome the progress that will stimulate economic development in depressed areas where abandoned buildings now exist. The Los Angeles Derby Dolls recently moved into the El Sereno neighborhood just this year, where we're now in a warehouse where it was abandoned for almost 2 years. We have now seen an incredible insurgence of the neighborhoods coming to our games, in addition to the neighborhoods joining our group and becoming athletes in our juniors programs, in our adults programs. And we are also in dire need of hotels, for we bring athletes from all over the world that come to our training camps and to our events that we hold every single year. So thank you very much. We are in full support.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, John Rovat with Camden. We're a property owner in the Arts District. At the risk of telling you something that you already know, we have a housing problem. We're here to help. We're here to help try to fix that. I support the ordinance. I support this moving forward. We have a couple of refinements that we're asking for. We ask that the artist and productive use requirement be shifted over to a tiered system with a project that's entirely live work, having additional dedicated arts and productive use space outside of that impacts the FAR that's available to build housing units, and that's really what's needed here. The other thing that I would like to see is that the planning staff who's going to be charged with implementing this policy be given the flexibility to make administrative changes consistent with other parts of the city. There's a small group of people that are trying to keep this area exclusive, and it's our job to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jesse Martin, Paul Solomon, Peter Guernsey.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jesse Paul Martin. I'm the son of the owner of Value Produce, Jesse Martin. I'm here representing him today. Value Produce is located in the Arts District, and we've been operating in the Arts District for over 20 years, much longer than a lot of people have been there. We've worked very hard to get to where we are to provide for our family. It's a big family business. We all work together. We have millions of dollars invested in the community, and we do not want our property values restricted by a very small vocal minority. We hear negative things from people who oppose new housing in the Arts District because they want to keep their rents high. I would love for our workers to live in the area, but they can't afford to live there. I urge you to listen to the property owners who have been invested here for a long time. I ask you guys to please approve this ordinance so we could provide housing for our workers and for everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Solomon?
Hi, Chairman Weezar. So I'm a member of the vocal minority, apparently. When we started to develop lofts, in my case, in sort of 1999 or 2000, in the Arts District, we started to work with the council district and with quite a number of the other people who've come to this lectern, and we worked together productively. In this case, we're not. We're on opposite sides in a sense. I don't support the ordinance and feel like it's destructive to the what makes the Arts District special and a generator of both housing and jobs for the city of Los Angeles. So my suggestion is that we might want to take a step back and consider that since a number of the vocal minority have been quite instrumental in getting the Arts District to the point that it is, that you consider kind of maybe talking to us and understanding further where we're coming from, and then hopefully we can work together, as well as a lot of the people who are supporting the ordinance to propel the district into the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter Gunze?
Hi, good evening. Please, 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 please pass this ordinance. My name is Pete Gerns. I represent Box 8 Studios. I moved to LA in 2004 from New York, and I've seen this in New York. I've been managing warehouses full of artists for 18 years. And our home is on East Washington. We produced LA Fashion Week for 5 years, 10 seasons. I was the Arts, Culture, and Education Director for the city for 2 terms, 4 years, and it's essential that this happens. We represent hundreds of artists and members, all that need homes, need places to work, and downtown is just it's a perfect example of a successful business model that allows artists to come in and lay those golden eggs. So please let this happen. If it can happen by Friday too, it'd be really good for our building safety issues. But thank you for your time, and please.
Thank you. Ben Brasso, Connie Castro de Bravo, Alessandra Vincent.
I'm Ben Brasso with Camden. We own 2.5 acres at 6 and Alameda, adjacent to the Arts District. We strongly support this ordinance. We've been following its development for a long time and would like to thank the Planning Department for an innovative way to both create jobs and create housing. Our only requested adjustment is that the Plum Committee will provide some relief from the 200 square foot per unit requirement for arts and productive uses. If you remember, previous versions of the draft only required 100 square feet, and it also allowed for the interior, the work portion of live-work units to contribute towards the arts and productive uses if those units were souped up. Now all of the live-work units are souped up or can provide up to five occupants for housing. So it's not necessary because it can provide five workers inside the units, and thank you very much.
Connie Castro de Bravo.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Connie Castro de Bravo, president of the East Los Business Association, and we too support the ordinance. I represent businesses including Holy Grounds Coffee, Echun Mexico Restaurant, and the LA Derby Dolls. As president of the East Los Business Association, we recognize that there is a need for responsible development that can improve our communities without stripping it of its character while at the same time creating jobs. We also commend that the committee required that all individual products go through a zone change that are vetted by our communities so that we maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods. As a business community, we commend the City Planning Department for expanding hybrid industrial live-work ordinance to areas like El Sereno. Please consider Alhambra Avenue as part of that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Alessandra Vincent.
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandra Vincent, and I work at Box 8 Studios. I love my job, and I love being part of a community that supports local artists, local musicians, fashion artists, and being able to provide a space that we can provide a wedding for people that can afford huge places and birthday parties and just fun events in the community. And I would just hate that for it to go away. So I'm here in support of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea Soden, Quetzal, Nick Castilla, and Dwayne.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Soden, and I also work with Box 8 Studios, and I'm here representing us as a whole and all the artists in downtown Los Angeles and Los Angeles as a whole. I would lose my job. Several dozens of other people lose their jobs. We work with hundreds of companies and people who want to put on fashion shows, and we're influential to all of Los Angeles and even worldwide. Like this, we've been here for 10 years, and we have plans and ideas to bring health food to downtown and all surrounding businesses, and we put on fashion shows and art shows and just keeping our city cultured. It's something that, if this isn't passed, like, this is all gonna be to waste, and it would be a shame, because, I don't know, this Pete and Box 8 has completely changed my life, as well as hundreds of other people whose lives we've touched, and, we always like to have a beating heart there, so this would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Quetzal?
My name is Quetzal. I am the Vice President of Islos Business Association, and I'm also owner of Quetzal Boutique in East LA. I am very excited that this ordinance is taking place on helping our communities to move forward, transforming abandoned land into a place where artistic entrepreneurs can come and find not only a home, but also a niche that will host their creative spaces at an affordable rate. The ordinance positively impacts our communities in the East Los Angeles region, a culturally diverse area in sore need of responsible development and affordable housing units. I recommend that the council approve this ordinance while requiring developers to maintain the community engaged at all times, every step of the way, while all these units are developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Castilla?
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Castilla. I work with Camden Property Trust. I support the ordinance. I believe it is a very unique and positive way to provide both housing and create jobs in the Arts District. I would, however, add that the 200 square feet of arts and productive uses spaces should be reduced. I believe that's punitive, and as others have said, it creates a disincentive for people to provide housing, which I think is the city's #1 need as far as space right now. I am a young renter in this city, and I will say from personal experience that it is very difficult to find affordable rents, and especially in the Arts District. So thank you for your time, and please consider these comments.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yes, good. This is the beginning of the end of zoning in this city. Get rid of zoning. You can do whatever you want with your land. Let's go back to the 14th Amendment. Because there's too much of this zoning, and every time you do something, you move a table, they call it an office. And then you have a cook plate, and then they call it a hybrid. Nobody knows what any of this is. So leave it up to the property owners to decide what it is. And on the utility bills, if there's any residential unit anywhere in the building, bill DWP to those tenants at residential rates and get them off A1A industrial and business rates. That will save these people thousands of dollars a year in needless utility expenses and create jobs. So this is very good, but amend it to reflect that so DWP bills these people as residential.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment. If I could ask the planning department to please come back up to the table so we could have a discussion and entertain some questions. And first, colleagues, I want to remind ourselves that after nearly 2 years of work by the city planning department and others, including numerous public outreach meetings with all concerned, with stakeholders and approval by the City Planning Commission, we now have a draft ordinance before us that will establish a promising new zone into the city's zoning vernacular. The hybrid industrial zone is consistent with the city's existing policy framework regarding our industrial lands, but I think it remains imperative that we adopt a land use tool that prioritizes two things in these neighborhoods that are dealing with market pressures to convert existing industrial spaces to new residential and retail developments. First, we must ensure that we continue to preserve viable industrial and productive areas by encouraging job-generating uses, while at the same time adjusting to shifting land use dynamics. We also have to make sure that we're preserving the unique character of our emerging communities. These neighborhoods have been witness to remarkable changes over the years thanks to a lot of transformative energy that has come from the residents and the development community. So with that, I have a few questions, and then we could continue to have the discussion. And first, on outreach, on communicating with people, there's been some contact with my office that not enough outreach was done. Can you please describe your outreach on this hybrid? I know we had the previous one that just applied to the Arts District, and now this HI applies citywide. And what type of outreach have you done for this the new ordinance?
Good afternoon, council members. This is Patricia Diefender for Planning Department staff. So we have done a good deal of outreach. A lot of the outreach, more recently, the outreach was to send the draft ordinance to all of the city's certified neighborhood councils. I believe there's nearly 100 of them. We sent the draft ordinance to the neighborhood councils, and we had a meeting subsequent to sending the ordinance out to hear from stakeholders to better understand what their feelings were on the draft ordinance. So that's been the nature of the outreach. And of course, we had a public hearing at the City Planning Commission, and we're having this hearing here as well.
Okay. And with respect to, there's a number of people here from the Arts District in particular. Did you have any community meeting with the Arts District?
Absolutely. Again, Patricia Diefender for the record. We had a number of meetings. This process has been going on for 2 years. Essentially, we began in January of, what is this now, 2013? Is that right? 2014, sorry. We began the process in January of 2014. We started with, our typical outreach is we start with small groups and we expand our outreach. We have held many meetings in the community. It was a lot of the Arts District people, but there were a lot of people following the process throughout the process. So, you know, this has been 2 years in the making, this ordinance.
Okay, and on the FAR limitation, how will that impact or curtail new development, generally speaking?
The FAR limitation, the ordinance is, right now, the FARs in much of the industrial areas of the city are limited to 1.5 to 1. So that's, you know, 1.5 times the buildable area of the lot is what you can construct. The ordinance actually creates a tiered floor area system in which by meeting certain requirements and doing certain types of uses, you can increase your floor area ratio. So the first tier allows you to go above, a project to go above 1.5 to 1 FAR up to a maximum of 3 to 1 FAR. If you are doing a live-work project and meeting all of the other requirements of the zone, i.e. providing the required amount of non-residential square footage, there's open space requirements, there's a public paseo requirement, and other development standards that have to be met. Beyond that, there's another increase in FAR. It's an incentive to put your parking underground. So you can go up to 4.5 to 1 if you underground your parking, because the massing of the project would be similar to that of a 3 to 1 project. And then there's another tier, another ability to increase your FAR to 6 to 1 if you do type 1 and type 2 construction. And you've been hearing a little bit about various construction types. There's a desire among some to see steel and concrete buildings. That's what the type 1 and type 2 are. We are offering, the ordinance proposes an incentive, an increase in FAR in order to do that kind of project.
One of the public speakers mentioned that the 110 foot building height prohibition or maximum would affect type 1 construction. How is that so?
Okay, so the ordinance currently proposes a height limit of 110 feet. These are areas, typically these areas that would be these industrial mixed-use areas are characterized by lower scale development. They tend to have, a lot of lower scale development. They tend to have a limited number of buildings that are taller. The 110-foot height limit is, trying to address the neighborhood character concerns, but also the ordinance has been revised with those technical amendments that we were discussing. The density bonus, we're trying to better align this ordinance with our density bonus provisions, both the city provisions and the state provisions. There is the ability for projects to achieve greater height limits with through the density bonus incentives. So I believe that at the highest levels of affordability that are provided, the buildings can achieve, I believe, about 148 feet or about 12 stories. So there is a way, there is a built-in ability to achieve greater heights, and the type 1 and type 2 projects, if that would make them more viable, there is a way for them to get there.
Okay. Thank you. I do have some suggested amendments, but I'd like to open it up to my colleagues. One thing that struck me as well from the public comments, however, is that there was a suggestion that perhaps the 16-foot minimum at the ground level shouldn't apply to mechanical areas, or are there some non-public areas? Does that make sense in the design of a building? I could see, why would we want those 16-foot minimums when, nobody's ever going to be there but some machinery or whatever to make the building work? How is that the viable amendment we should make? Or
that is. We had advised some of the members of the public who mentioned that. We're happy to make that, and we'll use the sort of the form and legality process that the ordinance will be reviewed by the city attorneys. At that time, we will look at revising that language. I think the desire is to exclude areas reserved for driveways and vehicular access, and our intention was that that height would be applicable to habitable space, the space that's used for retail and other ground floor uses. So we can do that for sure.
Okay. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Mr. Fuentes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is all very exciting because you're creating a new zone, and I'm just wondering how, so I think I understand for new construction, it's sort of easy to understand, maybe it's convoluted, but it's easy to understand what the requirements would be because they're laid out here as proposed. But for existing structures, how do you remediate sort of what's there and get it to conform with this? Is there a plan to do that? Is my first question. On the new construction, I'm looking through this. Is there anything that makes it, or would this fall into a low impact design standard?
Okay, Patricia Diefendorfer. The low impact design standard, do you mean the lid, the water?
Right.
Yeah, any project would be subject to those regulations. That's kind of the standard operating, those are the rules that apply to all projects, so they would be subject to that. As far as your question about the existing structures, this ordinance really was intended to address the new construction, so projects where there's new construction. As many of you know, some of these industrial mixed-use areas, they have had an introduction of residents through adaptive reuse, essentially reuse of existing buildings. This ordinance, if there's an existing building in one of these areas where it would be eligible for reuse in that way, there's a process for that, and that could happen outside of this ordinance. This ordinance is really about when you're proposing new construction or a project that's largely new construction, and what the rules would be for doing that. There is a provision that deals with how you handle existing structures. One of the things we heard is that there are many character buildings in these areas where they maybe don't have the protections of a historic building, but there's something unique and special about them. The ordinance allows that square footage to be incorporated into a new project, into new development, and you wouldn't have to count that floor area towards your maximum allowable floor area, nor would you have to provide parking for it. So it's like a mini adaptive reuse ordinance within the context of this larger ordinance that just encourages people to reuse parts of buildings if that's feasible. But the projects are largely for would be new construction projects.
And in terms of parking, I notice in the density bonus, that's pretty consistent sort of with the reduction of parking spaces. But if folks don't avail themselves of the density bonus, what does a parking look like in a new project like this?
Right. So we have modified. Thank you. We do have sort of more downtown appropriate parking requirements for this area, but there is the incentive. So it's one automobile space for every live-work unit, and essentially 2 automobile spaces for every 1,000 square feet of floor area. Enterprise zone. But that's pretty consistent with areas that are enterprise zones. And many of the industrial areas throughout the city are in former enterprise zones, so it seemed like an appropriate parking ratio for those areas. And we do create as an incentive for the affordable, kind of again in the vein of trying to make sure that this ordinance is consistent with density bonus ordinance in general. The parking reduction is one of the incentives that people could seek beyond that. So this is a slightly reduced parking requirement in general, and then there's the ability for people to take advantage of reductions if they do greater levels of affordable housing.
And the 50% off-site parking availability, is that something that's new to this type of use, or have we done that somewhere else?
I think this is something that is typically, I think the code right now limits it to just non-residential uses, and so we're expanding that to a wider range of uses.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Cedillo?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm supportive of your motions and of the amendments to it. My only questions are with respect to monitoring. I think some points have been well stated that we should be evaluating this process. I think this has been an incredible success. I'm familiar with this area since the 70s and have seen it evolve. Wrote the downtown rebound legislation, et cetera. But one of the things I think we should be doing is measuring and monitoring it so that we can see what this means to a community. I'm always concerned when people are concerned about the evolution of a community, and then they want to protect its origins. At some point, though, this unique character becomes a NIMBY response, right? And so I think one of the ways for us to manage that is to monitor the area, and that there should be some, Mr. Chair, maybe some timetables that we look at, maybe 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, to see if we're having the type of growth that we expect, both in quantity and quality for the area. So that might be something that we look at. And it just seems to me that we would want to have information that tells us where we're at today, a snapshot of today, where we were when we started with the rezoning, and then a snapshot today, and then a projection as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. I think that's a great suggestion, but let me suggest even sooner than that. I think if we don't have to put this in the ordinance, but we'll put it in the plum report to council and to the planning department, that the planning department provided an annual report to the plum committee on the progress and outcomes of this ordinance should it pass, so that we are reviewing it and seeing if there's any changes that we need to make to it. Yeah, if we could make that amendment on our report. So with that, let me anything else? No. Let me suggest some motions that we just circulated, some amendments that we just circulated. And the first is to amend section 4.B2B of the ordinance to state that any building containing guest rooms, provided that no single development site contains more than, it currently says 100, we want to change that to 149 guest rooms. And I think, as some of the public have suggested as well, is that that will be consistent with the city's recently adopted definition of boutique hotels. I understand there's no real, I mean, if you ask people in the industry, you could come anywhere between 50 to 150 rooms. People consider that, or even a little bit more than that. There's no definite definition in the industry, but at least this will be consistent with how we defined it in our recently passed wage ordinance for hotels. So we could change that to 149. Secondly, amend section 4.C.1B2 and table C.1 to replace the current floor area requirement of 200 square feet of arts and productive uses per live work unit with a tiered floor area requirement of, and let me explain that tier as listed there, but right now we have a live work square footage requirement internally within the unit, but there's another requirement that is asking for 200 square feet per unit as common space.
Sorry,
Go
can
ahead.
I just clarify one thing
Sure.
about that? Okay, because I think there's been a little bit of confusion about this.
Mhm.
So again, Patricia Diefendorfer for the record. So there's a couple of different things going on, and people have, it's obviously, new legislation and a very different kind of approach. So every unit that's a live work unit, right, is required to show on plans 150 square feet of the work area. That's actually to make it consistent with building code definitions of what a live work unit is. So really, these are two discrete things. There's the live work units, and there's a minimum amount of space that has to just be denoted on plans for every unit, showing that there is actually a space carved out for work. Separate from that requirement is a requirement that there be 200 square feet, it's a ratio per unit, of non-residential square footage. The intent, the policy intent there, and I think what commission, the intent with the action that commission took, was that there be a certain amount of non-residential square footage in every project that balances out the live work with an amount of space that's job generating, right? Because the live work units, we want them to be built to a certain standard so they could accommodate jobs and they could accommodate small businesses, but they may or may not be used in that way. So in order to make sure that there's a certain amount of job generation happening in these areas and we're retaining a jobs focus, retaining the tax base of the city, there's the ordinance as it's currently written requires 200 square feet per live work unit to be non-residential square footage that's actually not the common space. It's actually leasable space. There's another requirement for a common space. It's a small requirement, a minimum of 500 square feet to be used by tenants of the live work units as a common workspace. So I just wanted to be clear that these are separate and different requirements.
Okay, I understood the 150 minimum workspace area per unit inside the unit.
Right.
There was the 200,
Yes.
you described it as what?
Arts and productive. It's basically, it's leasable non-residential space. It's just having, again, requiring mixed use, the live work and other non-residential uses.
And then there's the 500 square foot minimum common area, right?
And
I'm speaking about the 200 because as the project gets larger, and we're requiring 200 per unit, we could have this massive amount of square footage. Now, we would necessarily need all that space as a project gets bigger. If we do a scaled approach, you kind of start balancing for that. So, for example, if we have 150 square feet of arts and productive uses per live work unit for the first 50 units, so you multiply 150 by 50, and then as you get between 51 to 100, you would have 100 square feet requirement. And then if you get from above 100 units, it would require 50 square feet per that. So just thinking out loud here, what do you think would be the outcome of that?
Right. Okay. So the idea of scaling, having a more of a tiered system for the non-residential square footage requirement, I think that's a reasonable idea to explore. The only concern with the tiering as proposed is that it really does result in a significantly less non-residential development. I think, again, the objective was to try to balance the need for the non-residential.
Let me ask there. Not necessarily, because then if they are required to do less of this type of space, can't they then now do more affordable housing if they pick up more on the bonus side? They could do more affordable housing.
Right. The amount of, so in larger projects, I mean, essentially what this does is it requires a certain amount of non-residential development of all projects at the lower levels, right, at the lesser number of units. Yeah. As you expand, as the number of units grows, if you have projects that are like in the maybe 300, 400, 500 units, those projects, they're larger sites, and they would have more options and more ability to accommodate greater square footages of the non-residential, but the requirement, if it scales down, in that direction, would be a lot lower. So I think it might be something to explore, that if we thought about scaling it so that the lower requirement is actually for example, for 0 to 200 units, the requirement is 100, and then you scale it up as the number of units grows, you'll have the ability to provide, for the larger projects, to provide a certain amount of non-residential that's more commensurate with their level of live-work units, and they'll have greater options for siting those units. Because one of the things that we heard from folks when we were talking to them is that the smaller projects might have a harder time meeting some of the non-residential requirements for financing and lending reasons. But the larger sites might, the projects might be able to accommodate them in multiple buildings. So these are just things that we wanted to put out there for the committee to consider.
Okay, thank you. And what I was going to suggest at the end of this is to ask that we come back in 2 weeks. I want to move this quickly. I know a lot of folks have been waiting for this, but with these amendments, if you could explore them, give some feedback, give a report, talk to stakeholders who are interested, and see what the outcome would be. I think, as I heard it, the concern is that if you do have a project that's a little bit larger and you have the 200 requirement per unit, you're going to have this massive space that perhaps would not be utilized. And we want all these massive spaces. Is there a better way of scaling it? It may not be as proposed here, but there may be a better place to scale it so that we don't run into those types of situations. So if this has created some other unintended consequence, we should discuss that in the next 2 weeks to see how best to come up with what makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Sure. I just wanted to say, I think we thank you for the opportunity to look at it again and provide some more feedback, and we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. So if we could keep, if it's okay with my amendments, I'll propose that we keep it as written in the planning department, where we respond to that scale that we propose, a tiered floor area requirement. And the other amendment is to amend section 4.G1 of the ordinance to state, pursuant to the same procedures found in LAMC section 12.28C, the zoning administrator shall also have the authority to grant adjustments of up to, currently it's 10, we want to change that to 20%, and I think that's consistent with all other types of authority allowed in other zones, unless there's some reason why we're making it different rather than the other zones.
No problem. Patricia Diefendorf again for the record. Yeah, I think this is fine. This amendment would be fine.
And then finally, the other amendment, which is the one that came up today, is the height of 16 feet in the floor to allow some adjustments, whatever the language may be, for non-habitable space.
Sure.
So we could have those 4 amendments. I would suggest that we allow the planning department to respond to these amendments and the public as well, and come back in 2 weeks and see how that flows, if my colleagues so wish to move forward. So those are my amendments. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harris Dawson, moved, I believe, by Mr. Cedillo. So we'll take that action. With the other amendment, actually there's 5 that, not in the ordinance, but a report that we get back annually to Plum on an analysis of how this ordinance is working out.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Councilman?
Yes, sir.
At this point, are you going to instruct the city attorney to draft the ordinance, or are you going to wait till they come back?
We'll wait till we come back in 2 weeks,
Okay.
Have the response from the planning department on those issues or any other issues that may arise between now and then. And then at that time, if this passes today, I would assume it's going to pass in 2 weeks with those amendments, depending upon what we look at. So
And so you know there's a placeholder for this item in council tomorrow.
we will continue that and immediately follow up soon after it's moved out of Plum, and hopefully continue it to a couple of days after Plum when it comes back in 2 weeks. All righty?
Thank you very much.
No objections? Okay, so ordered. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, next item.
It's a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission to include the NF Stokes residence as a historic cultural monument.
Staff here on this item? Hi. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ryan with the Planning Department's Office of Historic Resources. On the July 16th hearing of the Cultural Heritage Commission, they recommended declaring the NF Stokes residence as a historic cultural monument. It meets the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria for its style. It's a very intact example of the neoclassical revival style applied on a single-family residence in Hollywood, and the property dates from 1917.
Okay, thank you. And what was the action by the CHC? I'm sorry.
They declared it an HCM.
Okay, thank you. So they declared an HCM, and here we are entertaining an appeal.
Well, it goes before the city council for
okay.
approval.
Okay.
You're the
Gotcha.
final decision makers.
There you go. I'm refreshing my memory here. Thank you. Well, thank you. Let me go to public comment, and then we may or may not have some questions, so you could stay nearby. And the first speaker, the applicant and the owner each have 5 minutes. And then all the other speakers have 1 minute. So we'll start off with the applicant, Christy McGavie. Sorry. Welcome.
Thank you, Council Member. Welcome. My name is Christy McAvoy. I am representing Hollywood Heritage, which is the historic preservation organization in Hollywood. Hollywood Heritage prepared this nomination at the request of several neighborhood groups and is also supported in this nomination by the LA Conservancy. We have high hopes that this particular residence will be able to be adaptively reused and not demolished. We find that it may be threatened. It is an excellent example of its type, and and it contributes to its neighborhood the way that it stands. So we were happy to have the full support of the Cultural Heritage Commission and the support of our councilperson, whose representative was here until just a few minutes ago. So we encourage the support of the Plum Committee on this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Margarita Jarabek.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dr. Margarita Jarabek. I'm Principal Architectural Historian and Director of Historic Resources at PCR. I submitted a letter to your attention on behalf of the owner, Dana Haynes, and I'm here today to present my findings regarding 1905 Grace Avenue. A property must have both integrity and significance to be eligible for designation. In this case, the NF Stokes residence does not, in my opinion, possess sufficient architectural merit to meet the threshold of significance. There are numerous other residences in the Los Angeles area that meet the eligibility standards as significant examples of this style. Furthermore, 1905 Grace Avenue is the work of a local contractor, not a master builder. N.F. Stokes only built a few residences in the LA area. He did not help to shape the architectural character of the city. The design is a mediocre example of the neoclassical revival style, demonstrating a lack of knowledge of antique precedent and the architectural orders upon which the neoclassical style is based. It is also a copy of another residence he built a year earlier, located at 339 South Oxford Avenue. For these reasons, the N.F. Stokes residence, in my opinion, is not worthy of designation as a distinctive or outstanding example of the neoclassical revival style or of this building type. I've submitted a letter supporting my claim, my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. John Quiroto, Wayne Heidler, John Walsh. Okay.
John Girodo, Chair of the Preservation Issues Committee for Hollywood Heritage. Responding to multiple points of outreach from neighborhood stakeholders, Hollywood Heritage prepared the 1905 Grace Avenue N.F. Stokes residence nomination. A coalition of support was formed. Therefore, the Board of Directors of Hollywood Heritage, its membership, the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council Area 3 stakeholders, the Whitley Heights Civic Association, and concerned residents all urge you to forward this nomination to the full City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yes, I attended a Heritage Commission meeting a couple of times recently. They recommended approval of it. And I noticed that lately they want to talk about these architects copying things and doing all these things. One of the things you have to look at is a lot of these architects later in their lives, they build different kinds of projects. Maybe they built large projects and then they built smaller projects. So you have to look to the whole body of the architect's work. It is something that the community wants, and there's large support for it. But most importantly, the Cultural Heritage Commission always has their staff recommend the basis for approval. There are 3 grounds, and they passed on it, so therefore it meets those, and you should go ahead and send it forward. I know somebody's not going to be happy about it, but the community will be happy about it, and the little house will live long after we all move out of here. Thank you.
Lynette Schwartz, Brian Dyer, Renee Weitzer.
My name is Lynette Schwartz. I'm a board member of Hollywood Heritage, and I'm here today to support the nomination and designation of the N.F. Stokes residence. At the Cultural Heritage Commission meeting, I made comments in regards to the PCR report, which the examples that she gave, none of those were in Hollywood, number one, and none of those that she cited were historic monuments. This is the neoclassical example, and it's the only one in Hollywood. So to state it a little bit broader as she had is misleading. And we are in support of, as it stands, the designation and report that the Cultural Heritage Commission put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Dyer?
Thank you, council members. I am Brian Dyer. I am a 24-year resident of the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council area. I'm the Area 3 chair of the last 2 years, just trying to show my commitment to the area, although I want to make it clear I do not speak on their behalf. I would like to point out that Area 3, where this exists, is sandwiched and is bordered by the Whitley Heights Historic Overlay Zone and the Hollywood Boulevard historic designation. So we have many, many different contributing factors to the historic area of Area 3. Just because it is in the middle and is not protected doesn't mean it doesn't need those protections. It is one of the oldest buildings we have, giving context. Its significance is also to be considered in the context that it gives to the area. It stands sentinel to the historic overlay zone and Whitley Heights. You have to pass it. And now that traffic during Hollywood Bowl season, it's a major area. People are passing it every day and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this? I understand that CHC declared the inclusion of this residence in the list of historical cultural monuments. It was also identified in the Survey LA as eligible for local designation, as well as for the California National Register of Historic Places. A representative, Councilmember Ryu, Renee Weitzer, was here earlier. She couldn't stay, but she did express that Councilmember Ryu supports the designation as well. With that, we'll recommend that we approve the designation and move this item forward. Second by Mr. Harris Dawson. Any comments, objections? Thumbs up by Mr. Cedillo. No objections, so ordered. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, Councilman, is an appeal by Robin Safai. He's appealing the action of the Building and Safety Commissioners to export 5,100 cubic yards from 568 North Tiger Tail Road. It's a haul route action in CD 11.
Thank you. I see the applicants here. Is the appellant here? Okay. What's your name, sir? Okay. Okay. Quick overview by the staff, and then we will go to you, sir. I don't have your card up here, but we'll go to you after this.
Good afternoon, council members. Cora Johnson, Board Secretary for the Building and Safety Commission. Yes, we did have a public hearing for this project on August 18th to export 5,100 cubic yards of earth from the project site. That haul route was approved and the MND was adopted. And planning is here if you have any questions about the environmental.
Okay, thank you. We'll go now to the appellant, Robin Safai. Sir, you could speak up here on the at the podium. Yes.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. If you could move the microphone down, please, so we could hear you better. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Honorable members of the Plum Committee, 568 Tiger Tail LLC, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety, has usurped the authority of the City Council by issuing a grading permit and haul route to export 5,100 cubic yards of earth from a fragile mountainous ecosystem before I even had an opportunity to present my appeal to this here City Council committee in direct contravention to Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 91.7006.7, line 6. The grading permit was thus issued illegally, and I hereby request that it be revoked by your authority until the City Council fairly decides on the issue. Namely, I am requesting an environmental impact report which would appropriately address the environmental impacts on the biosphere, namely the habitat destruction of deer in the area, which the mitigated negative declaration in question does not address. Removing 1/5 the volume of a small mountain which exists at 568 North Tiger Tail Road and 576 North Tiger Tail Road, where I personally reside, is not a sound environmental practice and/or decision and violates the environmental preservation laws of the state of California, namely the California Environmental Quality Act of 1970. In addition, the MND also insufficiently addresses certain problems regarding erosion. It is completely irresponsible and preposterous that the planning department of the City of Los Angeles would propose and that the LADBS board would approve a mitigated negative declaration with no mitigation whatsoever for the certain impacts from erosion other than signage containing the contact information of the senior grading inspector of the LADBS on it. In addition, the Department of City Planning's entitlement is severely flawed. This is directly from the Department of City Planning website containing the requested entitlement for this current case number ENV 2015-852-MND. The requested entitlement states that a categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act Section 15062 is being requested for the haul route involving 5,100 cubic yards of soil being removed for the purpose of the construction of a two-story single-family dwelling. The California Environmental Quality Act Section 15062 does not exempt a project from its requirements at all. It only describes how to give notice of an exemption once an exemption has already been granted. Categorical exemptions are pursuant to sections 15300 to 15333 of Article 19 of that selfsame act where they are listed. The above-mentioned entitlement for the export of 5,100 cubic yards of earth does not fall into any class of exemption under Article 19 of the California Environmental Quality Act. Proof of which is found on the application for review of import-export, which states that if the department determines that the proposed grading may not be categorically exempt, then a EAF, environmental assessment form, shall be filed. The fact that an EAF was filed
Your time is up, sir.
proves that the proposed grading is not categorically exempt. End of comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. David Herskowitz and Moises Contreras. David Herskowitz is the applicant and Moises Contreras is the applicant representative. You have 5 minutes total, however you want to split that up. Or you could try to game the system and have one person speak 5 minutes and one other one 1 minute. But
hi, my name is Moises Contreras. I'm with Vertec Design Architects, and we are the firm that designed the house and that actually processed the obtaining of permits for the project. And I mean, we agree. We've read through all the planning department's findings and as well as the commission's office, and we agree with all their findings. And there's been a couple of mitigations that the planning department has implemented on these, the negative declaration, and we're aware of all these mitigations, and we're going to implement all of these throughout the construction of the project. And that's basically what we have to say for. And we're
Thank
here
you.
if you have any questions.
Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay.
Yeah.
David Herskowitz.
Something very quick. Good afternoon. My name is David Herskowitz. I'm the property owner of 568 North Tigers Hill Road. Mr. Robin Safai is the person that's appealing the haul route. Father and son sold me the property 7 months ago. So this person, his father and son, sold me the property 7 months ago with plans to build the same size basement when I purchased the property, something he doesn't mention. Also, Mr. Robin Safai, father and son, purchased the property next to me, the one that he says that he lives in, and also put it up for sale 2 months ago with plans to build the same size basement. So he's appealing something that he sold me. At the same time, he's appealing something and he's planning to sell another property with the same size basement. Also, he says he lives at 576 North Tiger Hill, which is not true. He lives inside an RV outside the property, not on the property. This is pretty much it.
Thank you. Wayne Mautestang.
All right, so the appellant lives in an RV. I like him already. So, 5,100 cubic yards. I mean, that's not cubic feet, that's cubic yards of dirt. That's big. So what you have to look at is, does CEQA apply, or is there a categorical exemption? If there's not a categorical exemption, he has to go back and get a CEQA permit. And that really sucks when you have to get a CEQA permit. So, you know, we know what's going to happen, but I'll say this, if they remove that dirt and that neighbor's land starts slipping, the city's going to be in a shitload of trouble because you're giving this the city's approval, and the city will be liable if his land seeps. So keep that in mind. Marquise Dawson. So you got to keep it in mind. Is it going to slip? If it is, then it's not categorical exempt.
Thank you.
I had an opportunity to speak myself, and
Did you fill out a card, ma'am?
I didn't. No.
Okay, you need to fill out a card, but go ahead and speak. And then you can fill out a card for the record and state your name, please.
My name is Margot Silverman, and I do know that my friend Robin Safai is also a physicist, and it has also been reported by NASA that we are indeed due for extremely, extremely heavy rains this winter. And the bottom line is, the law is created for the people to have indeed a grounded, real and true, human-level reference, and that is what we have also addressed today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I understand that after review of this, that I haven't seen anything that would require a full environmental report, or that any of the appeals suggested reasons for appeal are substantiated, and Council District 11, I think, is in support of denying the appeal as well. So we will move to deny the appeal and approve the project, and with no objection, we'll order that. So thank you so much. So ordered. Any other items on the agenda?
Public comment, Councilman.
Public comment? We do. John Walsh and Dwayne.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, talking to everyone on council phone, and chairman of the newly created Austin Butner for mayor. Eli Broad is their honorary chairman. As you know, I broke the story earlier today, this morning, about Austin Butner getting his ass kicked out of the LA Times, and that was because he gave the mayor a C report card. So they tore up the report card, gave him $2 million. That's the amount of money he got for walking out on them. And also, we checked the stock of the Tribune went up 11 cents today. Of course, it's been down about $18 since Butner was there. But Butner's going to be a much better mayor than he was publisher.
Yes, the big sacking of Austin Butner. Well, it had to happen. He started reporting on local news. You can't do that. Marquise Dawson, you cannot report on local stories and put it on the front page of the LA Times. It's forbidden. The Chicago Tribune owns the LA Times. Chicago's a mafia-run city, and you know we are a mafia-run city. The paper can't take on City Hall on the front page, so they can't have that. So they paid him $2 million to get the fuck out of the LA Times. Congratulations to Austin Butner and his lovely family. You've met them. They were here. And $2 million for the Butners is good money to pay those property taxes. Now, I met Paul Krikorian on the 10th floor insulting me that I stink. Give me $950,000 to settle my lawsuit with you guys, and I'll get the fuck out with Austin Butner.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spindler. If there's no further business, Mr. Clerk, We'll adjourn. Come on up. We don't have a card for you, but come on up and state your name for the record, and we'll give you a minute to speak.
Mr. Rosenfeld, the appellant himself, making public comment here too. I just wish to say that the fact that my father is an architect and has made plans for both properties is irrelevant, as I represent myself. In addition, for the record, I do not live in the RV. My RV is parked on asphalt. I live with an occupancy permit within the building that was erected in 1957. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So if there's no further business, we're adjourned.
Yes, Council.
Thank you, sir.